Battle of Verdun, the longest and most grueling battle of World War I. World War I was already a catastrophic conflict by 1916, a grinding war of attrition that had stalemated across the Western Front. Yet, among all the battles that defined this global conflict, none encapsulated the horrors and resilience of modern warfare more than the Battle of Verdun. It was the longest single battle in human history, lasting from February 21st to December 18th, 1916. Verdun wasn't just a battle for territory. It became a symbol of national determination for France and an emblem of the futility of war. Through 300 days of unrelenting combat, Verdun transformed the lives of the millions who fought there, the landscape it scarred, and the course of the war itself. This is the story of Verdun, where history was forged in blood, fire, and unyielding resolve. The pre-war significance of Verdun, a fortress and a symbol. Long before the thunder of artillery echoed across Verdun in 1916, the city was already steeped in history and pride. Perched along the Meuse River, Verdun wasn't just a fortress. It was a sentinel of France's eastern frontier, a symbol of defiance against centuries of invaders. Its strategic importance was unmatched. For centuries, Verdun had guarded the pathway into France, its walls weathering conflicts from the medieval era to the Franco-Prussian War. By the late 19th century, as tensions with Germany grew, France reinforced Verdun with cutting-edge fortifications, transforming it into one of the most secure strongholds in Europe. But Verdun was more than a military prize. For the French, it was a point of pride, a beacon of resilience. Losing it wouldn't just be a military disaster, it would strike at the heart of the nation's spirit. For Germany, this made Verdun the perfect target. If the fortress fell, so too might France's resolve. As the shadow of war loomed, Verdun became more than a place on the map. It was a challenge, a battlefield where both nations knew they would fight not just for territory, but for honor, survival, and the soul of their nations. The stakes were set, and history was about to be written in blood and fire. Falkenhayn's strategy. Bleeding France white. Eric von Falkenhayn, the chief of the German General Staff, envisioned Verdun not as a conquest of land, but as a battlefield where the French army could be systematically destroyed. His plan was as brutal as it was strategic, a war of attrition designed to exploit France's emotional and symbolic attachment to Verdun. Falkenhayn believed that France would be compelled to defend Verdun at all costs, funneling soldiers, supplies, and resources into an unwinnable fight. In his own chilling words, Falkenhayn sought to bleed France white. He intended to unleash an unprecedented artillery assault on Verdun, creating a nightmarish battlefield where French forces would face constant bombardment, impossible conditions, and unrelenting pressure. By drawing the French army into a battle of endurance, Falkenhayn aimed to force them to collapse under the weight of their own losses. The strategy, while coldly calculated, was merciless in execution. It was designed to break not just the French military, but also the nation's morale. Verdun would become a meat grinder, a place where human life was the currency of war. Falkenhayn's plan was horrifyingly effective on paper, but it underestimated the resolve of the French defenders. This was not a battle for territorial gain, but a test of human endurance. As the German artillery prepared to unleash hell on Verdun in February 1916, Falkenhayn's grim vision was set in motion. Verdun was about to become a crucible of suffering, resilience, and unthinkable sacrifice. The opening barrage. Verdun descends into hell. At precisely 7:15 a.m. on February 21st, 1916, the Battle of Verdun began with an eruption of fire and steel, that marked the dawn of one of the most grueling conflicts in history. The German artillery unleashed an onslaught so ferocious that it redefined the horrors of modern warfare. Over 1,200 guns roared in unison, pounding the French defenses with an unrelenting 9-hour bombardment. Villages surrounding Verdun, such as Ornez and Fleury, were obliterated in moments, vanishing under the hail of shells. The bombardment was so intense that the earth itself seemed to convulse, shaking violently under the impact. Survivors would later describe the scene as apocalyptic, a nightmare of deafening noise, choking smoke, and endless explosions. Trenches collapsed under the barrage, burying soldiers alive, while entire units were vaporized before they could even respond. The scale of destruction was unimaginable. Trees were shredded into splinters. The landscape transformed into a lifeless expanse of craters and mud. The thunder of the guns echoed across the region, reportedly heard as far away as Paris, over 130 miles to the west. The message was clear. Verdun had become the center of a storm unlike anything the world had ever seen. Once the shelling subsided, the first wave of German infantry advanced cautiously through the shattered terrain. Expecting little resistance, they moved methodically, their confidence bolstered by the devastation they had wrought. But what they encountered was a testament to French resilience. Despite being battered, outnumbered, and overwhelmed, the French defenders refused to abandon their positions. They clung desperately to their shattered trenches and makeshift fortifications, defying all odds. The relentless artillery had turned Verdun into a living hell, but it also steeled the resolve of those who fought to defend it. The opening barrage of February 21st set the stage for the months of suffering and sacrifice to come. It was a brutal introduction to a battle that would define endurance, break armies, and reshape the course of the war. Verdun, now engulfed in fire and fury, would become a name forever etched in the annals of history, a symbol of both devastation and defiance. The fall of Fort Douaumont, a stunning blow on February 25, 1916, just days after the German assault on Verdun began, a pivotal moment shocked the French defenders: the fall of Fort Douaumont. The largest and most formidable of Verdun's defensive forts, Douaumont had been considered the crown jewel of France's fortification system. Its reinforced walls, underground chambers, and artillery emplacements made it a fortress of modern warfare. Yet, its downfall was not the result of overwhelming force, but of a combination of poor French planning and sheer audacity by the Germans. Believing Douaumont to be safe from immediate attack, the French left it minimally garrisoned, with only a small number of elderly reservists and engineers stationed there. The German advance, led by a small detachment, exploited this vulnerability with remarkable precision. They infiltrated the fort under cover of heavy bombardment, encountering almost no resistance. By the time the French realized the fort was under attack, it was too late. The fall of Fort Douaumont was a psychological earthquake for the French army. A bastion deemed impregnable had been captured with astonishing ease, striking at the heart of French confidence. The Germans, understanding the fort's strategic value, quickly transformed it into a forward base. Its sturdy walls shielded troops and supplies, while its commanding position allowed them to dominate the surrounding battlefield. But rather than break French resolve, the loss of Douaumont steeled their determination. Verdun's defenders, bolstered by reinforcements and inspired by the call to protect their homeland, prepared to fight with even greater ferocity. The fall of Fort Douaumont was a wake-up call, reminding both sides that Verdun would be a long, bloody contest where no victory would come easily. What was lost could still be reclaimed. And for the French, Damont became a symbol of redemption, yet to be achieved. General Philippe Pétain, the defender of Verdun. France's response to the crisis came in the form of General Philippe Pétain, a man who would become a national hero for his leadership during Verdun. Pétain was a practical and cautious commander, focusing on stabilizing the front and ensuring that the defenders could endure the unrelenting pressure. He introduced critical reforms, including troop rotations, which allowed exhausted soldiers to recuperate before returning to the front. This system, often called the Noria, ensured that no unit was completely destroyed by the prolonged fighting. Equally important was the Voie Sacrée, or Sacred Way, a vital supply route connecting Verdun to the rest of France. Under Pétain's orders, this single road became the lifeline of the French effort. Despite constant shelling and congestion, it carried tens of thousands of troops, millions of shells, and endless supplies to the front lines. Without this logistical miracle, Verdun might have fallen. Life on the battlefield, a living hell. For the soldiers who fought at Verdun, the battlefield was a vision of hell on earth. Endless artillery barrages turned the landscape into a wasteland of craters and mud. Trees were shredded into splinters, entire villages vanished, and the ground became saturated with water, blood, and decaying corpses. Trench warfare was grueling enough, but Verdun added a new layer of horror. Soldiers lived in constant fear of sudden death from artillery, machine guns, or gas attacks. Gas masks became a soldier's constant companion, yet even they were not foolproof. The mud was so thick that it swallowed men and horses whole. Disease was rampant, with rats and lice spreading illnesses through the trenches. Food was scarce, and sleep was almost impossible. Soldiers described the experience as being buried alive, physically and mentally trapped in a nightmare with no end in sight. The turning point: French counteroffensives. As autumn arrived, the tide of the battle began to shift. Under General Robert Nivelle's command, the French launched determined counterattacks to reclaim lost ground. In October, they achieved a major breakthrough by retaking Fort Douaumont, a key position and a powerful morale booster for the French forces. These offensives were slow and costly, with progress measured in meters, but they marked a critical shift. By November, the French also recaptured Fort Vaux, further weakening the German grip on Verdun. Stretched thin by demands on other fronts, German forces began to falter. The French counteroffensives turned the tide, proving that Verdun could still be won. The endgame: December 1916. By December 18, 1916, the Battle of Verdun finally came to an end. The Germans, unable to break the French defenses and suffering from massive casualties, withdrew many of their forces. The French, though battered and bloodied, emerged victorious. Verdun had held, but at a staggering cost. An estimated 300,000 men had died, and over 700,000 were wounded. The battlefield itself was so devastated that it was declared a zone rouge, or red zone, uninhabitable for decades due to unexploded ordnance and environmental destruction. The legacy of Verdun: memory and meaning. Verdun's legacy is profound and enduring. For France, it became a symbol of national resilience. The phrase "Ils ne passeront pas," they shall not pass, became a rallying cry for the French people, embodying their determination to resist at all costs. Today, Verdun is a place of remembrance. The Douaumont ossuary, which houses the remains of over 130,000 unidentified soldiers, stands as a somber reminder of the battle's human cost. The surrounding battlefield, with its preserved trenches and craters, is a living museum, visited by thousands each year. Conclusion: Verdun's lessons for humanity. The Battle of Verdun is a story of endurance, sacrifice, and the unrelenting brutality of war. It stands as both a testament to human resilience and a warning about the devastating consequences of unchecked conflict. As we look back on Verdun more than a century later, we honor the memory of those who fought and died there. Their sacrifices remind us of the need to strive for peace and ensure that such horrors are never repeated. Verdun, with all its pain and heroism, remains etched in history as a symbol of humanity's capacity to endure and the terrible price of war.